Hello and welcome to Mindset Matters with me, Ciara Ní Bhroin. The aim of this podcast is to empower and uplift. My hope is that you'll gain an understanding around the power of mindset and how it shapes your reality. Each week, I'll speak to people whose stories and expertise will inspire you and show you what's possible. My very first guest on Mindset Matters is Gerry Hussey. He's written 3 books on self-improvement. His most recent, I Am, I Can, I Will. Gerry is a high-performance coach, so if anyone knows a thing or two about mindset, it's him. Now, Gerry, thank you for coming on my podcast, Mindset Matters. I want to start really quickly with a little icebreaker. And if you don't want to answer this, that's totally fine. And any questions you don't want to answer, just say, nope, sorry, move on. But what would you say to a fellow coach, I suppose, who hasn't been around as long as yourself, who's launching into the podcast arena around about the same time as the biggest voice of mindset in Ireland?
I would say do what I've always done. Stay in your own lane.
Yes.
Back yourself and just go for it. Don't be looking left or right. Just every single one of us is unique. We're all different, and we all have a voice. And I think that voice is, I often think, you pick any classic song, it's probably been sang by 10 different singers, and it's different every time. So, ultimately, we're all saying the same thing, whether you're a coach, a psychologist, a gut health expert. Thankfully, it's all beginning to come into one message. But I think that message has to be said in many different ways, in many different languages, to resonate with different audiences. So I would say, believe in yourself. I would say, stay in your own lane and don't look left or right.
100% agree. Okay, so let's launch into it now. Tell me, in your opinion, mindset shapes reality, okay? Give me your take on that.
For me, firstly, it's belief. So, mindset has something a lot more to do than brain. And we need to be clear that the brain is not the mind, and the mind is not in the brain. The brain is in the mind. And that's the first part we have to get to. So how we feel from a mindset point of view is a collection of messages from the brain, messages from the gut, from the skin, the organs, the vagus nerve. So when we have our organs and our gut health and our brain health in a state of cohesion, or a state of connection and balance, then we feel good, we feel happy, we feel confident. But if one of those things, so whether it's our hormones, whether it's our gut health, if one of those things, our vagus nerve, is out of whack, then we don't really feel great. And for too long, we got caught up in a sideshow that thought that mental health had something to do with the brain and the brain only. And there were stories out there about chemical imbalances. So mindset for me is this, it's how I feel. Mm-hmm. And if I wake up in the morning and I feel alive and I feel calm and I've good energy and I'm not tired and I'm not in a fearful mindset, then I'm naturally able to play with the world. I'm able to climb mountains. I'm able to jump over obstacles because we're built to do that. We're built as resilient, dynamic, agile beings. And if we can keep ourselves in a state of balance, then all those obstacles, they're just things to have fun with, things to play with, things to be curious about. We're like children who see a tree. They naturally want to climb it. They naturally want to jump into water. When we get out of balance and our nervous system becomes sympathetic dominant and we get stuck in fight or flight, and that changes our hormones, and that shuts down the health of the gut. We feel tired. We feel flat. And then the same mountain looks too big, looks too hard. Simple decisions we get exhausted from. So mindset for me is the whole of the being. It's the brain, it's the gut, it's the nervous system, it's the heart, it's the soul. And if we can have an integrated approach to keeping all of those things in balance, then the universe is just something to be played with. It's just something, like I always say to people, we can't make your challenges go away. Mm-hmm. We can't make the assholes in life disappear. So they're not disappearing, and the world is not getting easier. Mm-hmm. The challenges are not getting simpler. Your opponents are not going away. But don't focus on those. You can get stronger. You can get happier. You can be more resilient. You can build yourself so that they become insignificant. And that's what mindset for me is. It's building a sense of self, a sense of identity, a sense of values. It's giving ourselves an energized sense of resilience and focus and curiosity. And from that place, then we can deal with the world.
Yeah.
But if we as beings are shot, if we're exhausted, if we're living in a fear state, if we're telling ourselves that we're not good enough, if we're giving out to ourselves, then even the tiny mountain becomes too big for us.
And so for somebody who's, I suppose, new to the concept of mindset and not understanding that you can actually harness the power of your mindset, what, in your opinion, is the crux of shifting your mindset?
It's firstly, it depends on what you want to do. So if you're thinking about emotions, the fastest way to change an emotion we know is by moving the body. So years ago when people came to me for coaching or psychology, and a lot of psychologists were sitting in an office having a cup of coffee talking to people about change, talking to people about trauma. Trauma and emotions exist in the body, not the brain. And when you talk about these things, you're just activating the thinking brain. You're not impacting the trauma in any way. You might intellectually understand it. So the quickest way to move an emotion, the quickest way to psychologically shift your mindset is by exercise. So exercise is not about punishment, or it's not about hard exercise. You've got to move the body every day. We're meant to have 30 minutes of vigorous exercise every day, where we shake, where we move, where we chant. When we bounce on our toes, we activate the lymphatic drainage system. When we chant like ha, 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 we're activating the vagus nerve. So we're meant to be vigorously moving, shaking, chanting all the time. We're not ever meant to sit in this sedentary lifestyle. So number one to enhancing your mindset is firstly move. Move as much as you possibly can. Become a being that is moving all the time regularly. Secondly, it's listen to the story you're telling yourself. Nothing impacts us more than our inner story. You can go to a psychologist for 1 hour a week. You can go to a strength and conditioning coach 4 hours a week. You can work with people 40 hours a week. But you are in contact with yourself every minute of your lifetime. Nobody has a bigger impact on your cells, your genes, your nervous system, or your life choices other than you. So listen to you. What are you saying? What's the soundtrack of your life? And most people have an inner story that says, I'm not enough. Most people's inner story is stuck in the past, worrying about the future, giving out about other people. We become full of anger or judgment or comparison or criticism. And that kills us. And we know that the words we use do two things. One is they fire the reticular activating system in the brain. What's the reticular activating system of the brain? It's like when I go to Google and I type in red car for €10,000 and I do that 4 days in a row, suddenly, no matter where I go on social media, I'm getting ads for red cars for €10,000. So, social media works by one simple way. Everything you click, like, share or comment on is identified as something you're interested in. Your feed gets more of that, and everything you're not clicking, liking gets taken away from your feed. But that idea comes from the reticular activating system of the brain. We can't be consciously aware of everything that's in the universe. Our brain would be overwhelmed. So we are selectively conscious to some things and we are consciously blind to other things. So the reticular activating system is constantly stopping you from seeing and experiencing things that it thinks you're not interested in. So the question is, how does it know what you're interested in? Very simple. It listens to what you think about. It listens to what you speak about. It listens to the conversations you have with other people. And it identifies those things as the things you want to see more of. So firstly, the things we speak about and the words we use prime the reticular activating system so that we begin to see and experience more of those realities in our world. Secondly, the things we're not talking about. So if you're not saying I'm incredible, if you're not saying I'm infinite, if you're not saying abundance finds me easily, if you're not saying I'm absolutely capable of achieving my dreams, then you're not going to believe it. You have no known capacity within the brain. And then the other piece is, whether we know it or not, as we speak, the words we use are either threat-based or opportunity-based. So if you have a really important meeting, you're saying, God, I have a really exciting meeting today. I have a really amazing opportunity here. Your brain sees the meeting as opportunity, and it fires oxytocin. But if you say, I have a big meeting today, it's a big deadline, I'm under a bit of pressure, now you enter threat state. You're not getting oxytocin, you're getting cortisol and stress. Your prefrontal cortex shuts down and your cells, your genes go into defense mode, survival mode, which means you're switching off your immune system. So the words you use, the things you think about, have the ability to shape your decisions, but they also have the ability to change the expression of your genes, your cells, your immune system, and your nervous system. Now that's mind-blowing. So we are actually our own chemical and genetic engineers. Mm-hmm. Our cells, our genes are responding to the things we're thinking about, the words we're saying, the conversations. And that's the importance of self-talk. So move the body every day. Vigorously shake it, chant it, move it. And then listen to the words you're using. Listen to what you're thinking about. Where you place your energy and attention is what you're going to get more of in your life. So ask yourself, is my inner story empowering? Is it uplifting? Is it inspiring? Is it giving me a sense of control? Is it giving me a sense of empower? Or is it defeating me? Is it depleting me? Is it giving me a sense of being powerless? And if you don't change that story, you're going to be stuck in that reality for the rest of your life.
And Gerry, do you think does your upbringing or your childhood, does that affect your mindset?
It does until you decide it doesn't. And I know that sounds like a silly answer. We're not victims of anything. Yeah. We're not victims of our past. So of course, people who have experienced trauma growing up, people who've had, certain lifestyle conditions or, bereavement, of course that's going to impact you. And it impacts your nervous system. So trauma is not necessarily a thing in your head. Mm-hmm. Trauma, Gabor Mate says, trauma is not what happened to you. Trauma is what happened within you when that happened. It is a dysregulation of the nervous system. And so many of our modern illnesses that are now being classified as an illness, they're not an illness at all. They're not an illness. They're not a disease. They're the symptoms of a dysregulated nervous system. Mm. And one of the quickest things to dysregulate a nervous system is trauma. So how do we move trauma out of the body? So when we grow up, we can have a dysregulated nervous system. And that can present itself in so many different symptoms. And that can be from everything from gut issues to eczema in the skin, to headaches, chronic headaches, to migraines. Even now, the incredible research they're doing into ADHD is actually nervous system dysregulation, brain dysregulation, caused by trauma. I think when we look into it, gut imbalance and trauma are really a lot of the stuff. So, one, we can have that. Then the second question is, do we have to live within that for the rest of our life? Absolutely not. Because at some point, we have to let it go. At some point, we have to be willing to become a different personality. And what's a personality? It is a set of chemistry, biology, it's a known nervous system expression. It is everything that we're used to. And even our traumas become so ingrained in our identity that we don't want to let it go. There's a great analogy I use of someone falls off a boat and they fall into a sea. And the 48 hours bobbing up and down in the sea, clinging to a log, desperately trying to stay alive, desperately waiting for someone to come. And eventually the helicopter comes and the rescue guy comes down in a basket. And this person has spent 48 hours clinging to this log. And for the last 48 hours, the only thing they know, the only safety they've had is to cling to this log. Yeah. Physically, chemically, emotionally. And eventually the guy in the basket comes down. And the first thing he has to say to that person is, I need you to let go of the log and reach up and grab my hand. And 99.9% of the time, when the winchman tells that person, I let go of the log, what do you think most people say?
No.
I can't. I can't let go.
Yeah.
And for many of us, we become so conditioned and identified with our past, or pain or trauma, we can't let it go. And one of the reasons we can't let it go is that the ego is trying to keep you safe. And the ego is trying to say, as long as I keep you aware and keep you reminded of this, you won't forget, so you won't fall into the same trap again. Yeah. And that way, trauma is not something we're remembering. Trauma is something we're reliving. We're currently in a state, biologically, chemically, physiologically, as if the trauma is ongoing at this moment, even though the trauma might have happened 20 years ago. And that's why post-traumatic stress disorder is actually incorrect. It's an incorrect definition because it's not post-traumatic. The body doesn't know it's post-trauma. The body is in trauma. And I meet people who've had traumatic circumstances happen to them 25 years ago. And when I meet them, I observe their nervous system, I observe everything about them. They're still in trauma state. Yeah. So the body doesn't think it's post-trauma, it's current trauma. So you have to then be willing to make a brave and courageous choice. I'm letting this go.
That's it.
I am no longer being defined by my past. And then you have to be willing to engage in therapy and movement and chanting, and where you actually begin to fire your nervous system. So if the trauma has had your nervous system in a certain state for 20 years, your nervous system is now conditioned to living. It's addicted to living in that state. Mm-hmm. What you have to do is you got to get up every single morning and fire your nervous system in a whole new way. Fire your frequency. Fire new neurons in the brain. Every day, until eventually you break that cycle. You break that nervous system addiction. So you literally have to become a different person every morning.
Yeah, I think one of the key things, sorry Gerry to interrupt you, one of the key things you've said there is you have to be willing. And I think it's one of those moments in coaching where you notice that the client has all the theory and they know what they have to do, but it's that piece that hasn't dropped, that they have to do it. Do you think that's the biggest thing?
They have to do it and probably do it differently. Like I get lots of clients. I have one current client at the moment, maybe two, and their body's stuck in trauma. And they're meditating, which is great, and they're practicing yoga, and they're going to therapists, and they're working with 5 different coaches. Why? I don't know. The one thing they won't do is engage in the vigorous exercise. Yeah. Because deep down they know that's changing too much. They want that trauma in the body.
They're still attached to it. And one particular client, I keep cutting out the excuses. So I said, I'll even come to your house and I'll train in your house with you. Okay, no problem, ready to go. So we're meant to start last week. I was meant to arrive at the house the night before. Gerry, I'm after picking up a chest infection somewhere. You've picked it up or you manifested it? Yeah.
Okay, 2 weeks later, okay, ready to go again. They did 1 half session, mate. They think I pulled a hamstring halfway through. So unconsciously, the body and the ego.
Yeah.
I'm 6 months trying to get this person, and what they need is this vigorous shake exercise. They need to scream. They need to roar. But somewhere their trauma was linked to a moment.
Yeah.
Where they expressed their true self, and they stood up to somebody, and that's where the trauma happened. And in that moment they were taught, you never stand up for yourself again. You be quiet, you never shout, and you become obedient. And that's why yoga meditation works, because somewhere they've learned that boxing, chanting and screaming is wrong. And it's not me. I can't do that. It's not in my DNA. And that's where sometimes people are doing all the work. But is it the right work? Some people absolutely need to get out of the gym and get into more meditation and more yoga. Yeah. But some people actually need to get in and hit a punch bag. Yeah. And punch somebody else in a healthy, safe environment. And scream. I bring people up the mountains and we scream.
Yeah.
Your body has to be strong. I don't care what way you look at it. If your body is not strong, you cannot be strong. And I've been saying that for 30 years. And now we know that muscle mass and we know VO2 max is all linked to mental health and length of life. Yeah. Your body has to be strong. It has to be robust. We know now that even the things like, there's a great physiotherapy is doing great research looking at little things like the impact of a modern lifestyle. So one time ago, my dad was growing up. He never went to the gym, but he was working a shovel all the time.
Yeah.
I was down at my parents, my wife's parents' house the other day and did a big pile of clay out the back. And I said I'd move it for them. And I spent 2 or 3 hours shoveling it. And I was just aware I'm moving every body part. From the hamstrings to the glutes to the back to the shoulders. Yeah. So they were shoveling every day. They were lifting and carrying things. They were pulling and moving. Now when you look at something like high rocks, it's meant to be brutal hard exercise. That's what my dad was doing every day of the week. Lifting things, pushing things. So now we're looking at the health benefits of carrying heavy things. Mm. The health benefits of pushing, twisting, rotating has a massive impact on our mental health. So I would say when the body feels strong and you've good muscle mass and you have a healthy gut and you can twist and rotate, if you're tight in the body, if your body's not strong, the mind can't be strong. Yeah. Because you cannot separate the mind and body. And we all know a healthy body, healthy mind. It's been around for years, but the answers are right in front of us. So some people, they need to work on the mind and the mind alone. But we got to work on both. Yeah. The stronger the mind, the better the body. But the stronger the body, the better the mind. And you got to put both together.
That's it. Gerry, tell me a little bit about, describe your mindset as we sit here today.
Mindset is, mine is changing all the time, so mindset is not static. So some days I wake up and I feel invincible and unstoppable, and some days I wake up and I'm overwhelmed by fear, anxiousness, worry, and that's okay. One time ago when I was feeling anxious, I used to think that I'm just an anxious person, I can't change this, and I'm going to be anxious the rest of my life. Now on the day I feel anxious, I figure out, why do I feel anxious? Have I pushed it a little bit too hard the last couple of weeks? What's my diet been like? So I go back to the basics, and then I know that no matter how I feel today, if I'm willing to put in a few days of good work, I'll probably feel better. So I have the ability now to feel anxious or feel scared, but know that it's only temporary. Know that I can change it. So that's a great sense of power to have. I'm not my anxiety. I'm not my fear. I can hear myself telling myself fearful stories and kind of have a laugh at it. So, on any given day or in any given week, your mindset is going to be moving. Mm-hmm. The confidence I have now is not that I'll never feel fear again or I'll never be overwhelmed, or I feel those things all the time. The confidence that I have is that when I do feel those things, I can work through them. Yeah. They don't stop me. Mm-hmm. They don't define me. I know they're temporary. And I know that if I really examined the way I've been living over the last while, or something going on in my life, or there's a reason why I feel like this. So I become curious. I figure out why potentially I feel like this. I try to eliminate that, but then I go back and double down on yoga, exercise, meditation, cold water immersion. And it's literally all of those things. And people say, but that's not easy, Gerry. I've never said it's easy. But is it worth it? Absolutely. If I didn't do those things, mm-hmm. I would be racked with anxiety. I mean, you're talking to a kid that grew up with, massive anxiety and massive stress and a suicide attempt. That's who I am. If I don't do this work, that's who I am. But when you do this work, you realize, actually, you can be anybody you want to be. Mm-hmm. And who you are has a direct correlation to the activities you do every day. So a lot of people see people who are calm and strong and happy and say, oh, well, they're naturally happy. They're naturally confident. People look at Cristiano Ronaldo and say, he's naturally gifted. If you think Cristiano Ronaldo is naturally gifted, go and spend a week with him. And for the week, train the way he trains. eat the way he eats, sleep the way he sleeps, recover the way he recovers, you suddenly realise it's probably 10% natural talent and it's 90% work. So that's the reality of it. Every single one of us has the ability to feel sad, anxious and depressed. And every single one of us has the ability to feel confident and relaxed and happy. It comes down to the work. And it's a different type of work for everybody. That's what I'm saying. You need to have like a multi-dimensional list of tools. And you have to be working on them all. From diet to lifestyle to sleep to cold water immersion. And you can do a lot of these in 15 minutes in the morning. I have a 15-minute routine that I do in the morning where I vigorously shake, I dance, I breathe, I regulate the vagus nerve, I punch a bag, and then I sit down and meditate for 45 minutes. So 15 minutes is 1% of your time.
Yeah.
And I've proven to people in literally under 15 minutes. I get them to rate how they feel before, and I take them through that 15-minute routine and I say, now rate how you feel now. Indescribably different.
Yeah.
And that 15 minutes is 1% of your day. Surely you're worth 1% of your time.
Gerry, was there a defining moment in your life where that sort of message dropped, that you had the power, you were in control of how you felt and you could change how you felt?
No, the biggest defining moment in my life was, a kid racked with anxiety and all types of chronic pains and aches and just struggling to deal with life. And eventually my mum and dad brought me to a paediatrician, and I had all the blood tests done and with the brain scan done and all of this. And two things I noticed was, one, when we met him first, the first 10-minute consultation, 10 minutes, he spoke to my mother about me. And I remember at 14 wondering, why is he not talking to me?
To me, yeah.
Secondly, we went and did all these tests, and they all came back absolutely clear. He rushed into the office, and we had about 5 minutes this time. And for the first 3 minutes of that, he sat down, flicked through all the notes that he was clearly given 10 seconds before he walked into the room, and he said to my mother, "Great news, all clear, you have a perfectly healthy young man." It was at that moment I started to think, there's something they're missing here. My mother didn't want to leave it at, so my mother challenged him. Is there another test? Is there something else? Because my mother used to see me crippled with anxiety. I'd be sweating. I couldn't stop sweating. My heart rate was racing. I could hardly breathe. And after she challenged him, he said, "You've taken up enough people's time with this." And she said, "Well, what is it?" He said, "If you want my honest opinion, he's making this up so he doesn't have to go to school." That was the moment I said, I'm going to find this out. It wasn't about me anymore. And it wasn't about poor Gerry. I started to think about all the other 14-year-old kids that were being dismissed. I said, they've missed something. I'm not making this up. It was the first time in my life I backed myself.
Yeah.
I said, I don't know what's causing this. I don't know what it is. I don't know how I'm going to understand it. But the one thing I do know is I am not making this up. So at 14 years old, I started finding books on the nervous system, on the brain, on the gut. By the time I was 16 or 17, I was fairly fluent in things like the gut-brain axis, the microbiome, which Western medicine is now telling you this is groundbreaking new research. It's not groundbreaking research because I read this 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Deepak Chopra was writing about this, and Deepak Chopra was a medical doctor.
Yeah.
But he's been dismissed. Bruce Lipton in the 70s was talking about epigenetics. And now it's being peddled to us by a profession who are kind of saying, oh look, it's brand new. There's no way we could have known. There is every way you could have known, but you didn't either want to know or you weren't willing to find out. Because the microbiome and the gut-brain axis and the vagus nerve have been worked on for thousands of years. Thousands of years. We've had acupuncture, we've had chanting, we've had meditation, we've had screaming. We know that food is either your greatest medicine or your slowest poison.
Yeah.
There's no mental health disease. How many of them are actually diseases? How many of them are dysregulated nervous systems? So at 14, I said, this is what I'm about now. And I have a huge appreciation from Western medicine. I want to put that on record. We've often rushed into a hospital with one of our 2 young kids. And if anyone has ever had to rush their child to an A&E, it is terrifying.
Yeah.
And there's nothing in that moment I can offer my child.
No, I know.
And you walk in and it's 4 o'clock in the morning and you meet an incredible doctor who is probably on his 25th hour of a shift. And within an hour, they've saved the life of your child.
Yeah.
So don't tell me for a second that Western medicine isn't magnificent. It is magnificent. And in certain situations, it is life-changing. And I've been lucky enough to be one of those parents rushing their child into hospital, saying to a doctor, please do something. And only because of that doctor's training, I mightn't have one of my children today.
Yes.
So I want to put that on the record.
Yeah.
Western medicine is magnificent, and there's people alive today who could not be alive.
100%. Mm-hmm.
My only healthy challenge is, I think for too long they've looked to the body only.
Yeah.
I think for too long they didn't take into effect things like trauma, emotions, chronic stress, the microbiome, the gut-brain axis, the relationship we have with ourselves. Mm-hmm. I think they looked too much in the body. But that is changing, and I see magnificent doctors now, and I see magnificent courses being run, and it's all beginning to come together. So my mission was not to prove Western medicine is wrong. Western medicine is magnificent. Mm-hmm. My mission was to try bring something new to the conversation in terms of psychology. So psychologists were trained to sit in a room and talk about trauma. I have to bring something new there. So all I've been trying to do is bring a tiny new piece that looks at the human being as a collective entity, where you can't separate the mind from the body. You can't separate emotions from the organs. You can't separate our thoughts from our nervous system. And now when we see ourselves in that integrated, connected identity, you begin to realize, actually, there's no right or wrong piece of the jigsaw. They're all right. But we all have to be open. And sometimes the cure might be 99% traditional Western medicine and 1%. But then sometimes it's 1% traditional medicine and it's 99. Yeah. So you have to accept that every piece of the jigsaw is incredibly valuable.
Yes.
Are there people out there who spin all types of snake oil? Yes.
Yeah.
But in every profession in the world, from psychologists to coaching to carpenters, electricians and doctors, there's good and bad.
Yeah.
So you have to find the good people. You have to check the science. You have to do your research. Mm-hmm. You can't just accept. No. And I would say anybody that says the answer is all in Western medicine and everything else is quackery, or anybody that says all Western medicine is wrong, I'd say avoid those people. Mm-hmm. Because binary thinking doesn't help anyone.
No.
Fear-mongering doesn't help anybody. There is a solution, there's a part of the answer, and there's a gift in every aspect of the picture. The person has to figure out then, even if some pieces can only offer 1%, that's 1%. So that's been the defining moment in my life. Yeah. It's that moment where I realised it's not about me now. So stop saying I wish I didn't have anxiety. Become curious about it. Become curious about, why do I feel things in my body? If it's happening in my brain, why do I feel sick in my body? Why does my heart rate? Like, I realised very early in life, when I started thinking about certain things, my heart rate changed. So I suddenly realised my heart was connected to my thinking. And like, through very simple things like breathing and meditation, I realised I could slow my heart rate down. So who's controlling my heart? I am. And even when they talk about the automatic or the automatic nervous system, we kind of we think about it as if we can't control it. Well, now we know we can control it. Yeah. Blood pressure, heart rate. Wow. So it's that curiosity that I have. It's an appreciation for every aspect. Yeah. And I often put myself into conferences, and even for me, it might be a bit too far out there. And I might come out there and say, actually, I don't believe in that at all. But I got a good question.
Yeah.
Or something was said that made me more curious.
Yeah.
And in this moment in my life, I might say, I don't believe that. But I've said that so many times in my life. That's nonsense. But after 5 years of research and analysis, I realised, oh my God, they were right.
Something else lands, yeah.
Something else. So I think we should all be open-minded. Mm-hmm. We should be slow to dismiss anything.
Yeah.
We should be slow to judge anything. Mm-hmm. And if we recognise that everything potentially has a golden nugget in there, we have to go in, and if 99% of it just doesn't resonate with you, that's okay. Sit with the 1% that did. Take the one question that you can out of that and sit with that question for 3 to 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And as you grow and as you develop, that question is like a seed. It keeps, and then one day you wake up and say, now I have it. Oh my God.
Makes sense, yeah.
So that's how all my big realizations happened. I probably rejected it at the start, but I sat with the question and I kept looking and I kept trying to understand with that curiosity.
I think that's one of the things that we do as human beings, is that if we don't understand something initially, or if it doesn't resonate with us, we dismiss and we leave it there, instead of doing that important piece of sitting with it and sitting with what we feel ourselves.
Now, of course, it's like my new book. The inspiration for my new book came from being on a train, and one lady, said, oh, I know you, you're Gerry, I've read your books and I love them, and she's given me all this incredible glowing, and I'm travelling with my dad and I'm so delighted that my dad is witnessing this lady and I've transformed her life, and oh, incredible. And then by pure fluke, the guy beside her said, I've read your books as well. And at that point now, I was ready for more. Bring it on. Tell me how amazing I am. And I said to him, and how did you find my books? He said, I got nothing from them.
Wow.
He said, I don't. And he kind of was going to apologise for saying, and then he's like, nah. No, he said, I got nothing from them. So at that point, I could either kick back and say, well, it's not and go into blame or judgment, or I could retract and be embarrassed. But I sat there and said, tell me why.
Yeah.
He said, well, there's so much in it. He said, in your books you've touched on everything from the gut-brain axis to neurochemistry to subconscious programs. He said, and I'm new to this space. And when I finished the book, I was overwhelmed. I didn't know where to start. So he's talking to me as we're taking our bags down. We're walking down the platform. I'm listening. And just as we go through the ticket machine, he says to me, if somebody could change one thing, just one thing, Gerry, just one thing, what one thing would have the greatest impact on us? And I said to him, I'm not sure. But can I take your number and I'll think about that and I'll ring you. And I literally thought about it for a month, from a full month, every day. I thought about what one thing has the greatest impact on us. And I realised it's our inner voice. I realised, like I said earlier, that we are listening to ourselves all the time. So I sat with that question. The world said that my first 2 books, they broke many records. They're extraordinary, successful books. Mm-hmm. And I could have been attached to that. But he gave me an incredible gift. Yeah. So for as many people who loved my first books, there was probably as many people who got nothing from them. And if I wasn't willing to listen and sit with that, this third book would never have been born. And this third book, I changed publisher, I changed writing style, I changed everything. And I wrote a totally different book. And a lot of people are saying this is my best book. So it brought something out in me. It was a new challenge. Yeah. And it allowed me to become a different type of writer. It allowed me to distill down my message. And that came from what some people might have said was negative feedback. But no feedback is negative. I got my ego out of the way and I sat with that question. And I think we all sometimes get feedback, but we're not able to hear it.
No.
Or we're not able to hear it in the way it's meant. Mm-hmm. So we reject it or we get disillusioned by it. Yeah. This guy was giving me an incredible opportunity to grow. And I'm so glad I took it.
Amazing.
But it literally, it is sit with that question.
Yeah.
And sit with the discomfort of it.
Mm-hmm.
And sit with the potential that you may be wrong, or that the deepest belief you hold could actually be wrong.
Yeah.
Or the person that you dislike most in life, it might actually be you that's wrong. Or the hardest thing for any of us to hear is that we are actually the creators of our own pain.
Yeah.
And to sit with that question, where might I actually be creating my own pain?
Yeah.
Where might I be the problem? And the gift to that then is, where am I the solution? It is an incredible ability to look inward without judgment, without rejection, and ask those questions. Where might I be creating my own pain? And how could I let that go?
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful thing. I think that's actually a really powerful note to end on, is to leave people pondering that.
Yeah, well, I think to end on, I think most people, if I could end by asking people, just take a deep breath this morning and just think about how short life is. And think about how precious time is. Now think about the things you're thinking about. Think about the things you're allowing to disturb your peace. And ask yourself, is it actually worth it? How long more do you want to carry that anger? How long more do you want to carry that belief? How long more do you want to prevent yourself from feeling happy? So the first question is, ask yourself, what is the time to let go of? Second question is, what's the belief you hold about yourself? And is that enabling or disabling you? Is it healing or hurting you? Thirdly is, when you look at the way you live your life at the moment, the speed you live at, the food you eat, the exercise you do or don't do, the words you use, ask yourself, what state do you think your nervous system is in? If somebody was to write a book about you right now, what would the title be? And ask yourself this question. If nothing changes, if you continue to eat the way you eat, work the way you work, live the way you live, and continue to stay in that state of nervous system regulation, what does that look like in 10 years' time? And does that inspire you? Nobody's telling you you need to change. And nobody can make you change. But when we stop and breathe and ask ourselves, in this one short, beautiful life, if I truly loved myself and I was not afraid to fail and I didn't care how it looked to other people, if I was willing to let go of anger, if I was willing to let go of the past and willing to stop worrying about the future, what would I do? And then go do that.
Yeah.
We get one short life. It is up to each and every one of us to define and describe how we live that. What we carry, what we don't carry. The way we speak to ourselves, the words we use, the conversations we get involved in, the people we hang around with. Sometimes without even knowing it. We're just caught in a cycle of anger and frustration and resentment and judgment. And we're just knocking ourselves every chance we get. So life is precious. Every day is sacred. And when you wake up in the morning, spend 15 minutes to balance your nervous system, to breathe in fresh air, to strengthen the body, to fire new brain parts that says, I am, I can, I will, and to look yourself in the mirror and say, I love you enough to go do this for you. And every single one of us has an incredible ability to move, to change, and to transform.
That's it for this week. Next week I'll be speaking to neuroscientist, psychologist and author Sabina Brennan about how our brain works and its part in shaping how we see things.